Wakizashi's Tea House. Hey, konnichiwa minasan, it's Gray from Wakizashi's Tea House over in Japan. How are you doing? Are you good? Are you genki? I hope so. Okay, today I've got a review of the original Sandman issue 1, which came out back in January 1989. It's issue 1 of a 75 issue series, plus one special, written by Neil Gaiman with art by Sam Kieth and Mike Dringenberg. Now, I have the actual original issue that I bought when I was young here. You can see the same wonderful Dave McKean cover. The Dave McKean covers like changed the way covers were made, I think, back in the day. I love his use of shelves and real objects along with the art, the painting. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a kind of long review, deep dive into this issue. There's going to be spoilers if you don't want to know the story for the very first issue. And what I'll do at the end, I want to read from Sandman issue 4, where you get Neil Gaiman's introduction to why and how he started the Sandman series. Okay, so please keep watching. Here we go. June 6th, 1916, Witchcross, England. Dr. John Hathaway arrives at the large property of self-proclaimed Lord Magus, Roderick Burgess. Dr. Hathaway has brought Burgess a rare book known as the Magdalene Grimoire, a book he needs for a magical ceremony he's planning, a ceremony intended to capture death. June 10th, 1916. We get brief glimpses of four people's lives. In Toronto, Canada, Ellie Marston is listening to a bedtime story. It's Alice's adventures through the looking glass, and it terrifies her. In Kingston, Jamaica, Daniel Bustamante sleeps and dreams of a castle in the air, a castle made of clouds. Shift to Verdun, France. Stefan Wasserman dreamt of being a soldier. In the trenches, he is waiting for dark when he will go over the top again. Poor Stefan lied to become a soldier. He's not quite 14 years old. In London, England, Unity Kincaid whimpers in her sleep. She dreams of a tall, dark man with eyes that burn like stars. Back in Witchcross, England, Roderick Burgess dreams of power, glory, and most of all, death. The time for the ritual arrives. It's midnight, of course. Burgess boasts to his young son Alex that what they are going to do has never been tried before. He also reveals that Dr. Hathaway stole the grimoire from the Royal Museum, meaning that he will be their pawn to control from here on in. Poor old fool. We are told that just for a moment, Burgess hesitates as the full scale of what he is attempting to do sinks in. To capture death! The ceremony begins. The ritual requires a series of unique objects, including a coin made of stone, a song stolen from the dirt, a knife from under a hill, a stick which was stuck through a dead man's eye, a rat's claw, a feather pulled from an angel's wing, and Burgess's blood. The Magus and his followers begin chanting the words of the ritual, imploring the being to come. Incredibly, a cloaked figure materializes in the room and collapses onto the floor in the center of a magical circle. The figure is wearing a strange helmet, some kind of red jewel around its neck, and holding a small pouch. On this page, the story's title is revealed, Sleep of the Just. I don't believe it! We did it! No, replies Burgess. We failed. This isn't death. Then he takes the pouch, the jewel and the helmet from the unconscious figure. The Magus' magical ritual has captured Morpheus, the Lord of the Dreaming, the Sandman. We return to the four people briefly glimpsed earlier. Young Ellie has fallen asleep and we are told she doesn't wake up. In Jamaica, Daniel's dreams have become so terrifying that he keeps himself awake. Soldier Stefan went over the top and hasn't slept since. The doctors wonder how long a boy can go without any sleep. Unity Kincaid has begun to sleep for longer and longer periods, her dreams forgotten. In a gorgeous page of comic book art made up of 6 circular panels, we see things from Morpheus' perspective. Magus Burgess tells Morpheus he's trapped and bound by the magic circle and crystal cell which surrounds him. You won't get out until the circle is broken, and the circle will not be broken. On the next page we move forward in time to June 1920. The war is over. Professor John Hathaway's theft of rare books and manuscripts has been discovered. He writes a suicide note incriminating Burgess and takes his own life. Damn you to hell, Burgess. I'm sure I will see you there. As Hathaway dies, we see his suicide note burst into flames. Fool. The lack of a suicide note baffles the police. Professor Hathaway's death is dismissed as being due to a mental imbalance. Despite links being discovered between Hathaway and the Magus, Burgess is cleared of any involvement. At the same time, the newspapers are reporting a worldwide sleepy sickness affecting people at random. They fall asleep and never wake up, living the lives of sleepwalkers. We jump ahead to August 1926. 10 years after the Dreamlord was captured by Burgess, he remains silent, infuriating the Magus. He hates us, he just stares with those creepy eyes of his. Burgess's son Alex is now a young man. He has discovered who they have captured. In the pages of an ancient book is a picture of a strange figure. It is wearing the same helmet Burgess removed from his guest, the King of Dreams. Well done, Alex. Now you know why I ordered the guards never to sleep. I knew he had to be one of the Endless. This is where we first hear about the Endless. Burgess speaks of death, desire, destiny, and dream. November 1930. Burgess's second-in-command, Ruthven Sykes, absconds with stolen cash, treasures, and the Magus's mistress, Ethel Cripps. A magical war is declared. Sykes makes a deal with the demon for protection. He offers the Dreamlord's helmet in exchange for a magical amulet. 6 years later, Ethel leaves him and takes the amulet with her. No! God, no! His protection gone, Sykes suffers a grisly and painful death. 9 years later, we get brief glimpses of the lives of Ellie, Daniel, and Unity. Still suffering from the sleeping sickness, we discover that Unity was violated in her sleep and gave birth to a baby girl. She slept through the whole thing. Wesley Dodds no longer has nightmares of a helmeted figure with burning eyes. Not since he started going out at night wearing a gas mask and knocking out criminals with his sleeping gas gun. He's not sure why he sprinkles sand on the villains. The idea came to him while he slept. It's 1947 and the Magus is old and angry. Damn you, this is your fault. You could have made me immortal, ageless, but I'm old and you haven't aged a day. We briefly hear Morpheus's thoughts as he waits. He gets no satisfaction seeing Burgess die. On the Magus's gravestone it reads, "Not dead, only sleeping." It's the late 1950s. Alex and his personal assistant Paul Maguire discuss the strange being who's been imprisoned in the basement for 40 years. It's safer just to leave him down there. I'll be dead long before he gets out. In a lovely progression of panels, we see Alex slowly make his way down to Morpheus's prison. He offers to free the Dreamlord in exchange for power, immortality, and a promise to take no revenge. I know you understand me, say something! Morpheus only continues to stare at his captor. 1970 arrives and Alex gives control of the Order of Ancient Mysteries to his assistant Paul. Paul dismisses magic, seeing the Order as a way of parting foolish people with their money. Alex spends most of his time in his study writing articles defending his father's reputation. He keeps returning to one book, the Liber Fulvarum Paginarum, which translates as the Book of Yellow Pages, a British in-joke by Gaiman, and one page in that book which shows an image of Morpheus wearing his helmet. Time continues to move forward and we reach 1988. Alex has grown to hate the silent figure in the crystal cell. You're nothing special, just a naked man in a glass box. Then we get a close-up of the Sandman's starry eyes and the word soon. As Paul pushes Alex's wheelchair, one of the wheels disturbs the magic circle. The guards, who have been warned never to sleep, suddenly grow weary and one starts to dream of a holiday in a tropical paradise. It begins. What was that? The Sandman lies still on the floor of his cell. Oh no, you don't think he's dead, do you? They get Paul, and fearing the worst, he unlocks the crystal cell. As the men lean in closer, Morpheus opens his palm to reveal a small pile of sand. He blows the sand in their eyes and they collapse. Then we are treated to this gorgeous image of the Dreamlord opening some kind of portal. When Paul and the guards awake, the cell is empty. He's gone. Morpheus returns to the dreaming, naked and hungry. He takes food from a passing dream and then proceeds to use his weakened powers to clothe himself. I need the tools that were stolen from me by my former captor, tools and revenge. Around the world, the sleepers begin to wake up. We see Ellie, Daniel and Unity. I dreamed of a baby. Alex is taking a nap. In his dream, he sees a black cat with glowing eyes. He follows the cat to a room with 2 chairs. The cat sits in one and transforms into Morpheus. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" "It's you!" Panicking, Alex starts to splutter out excuses, but the Dream Lord shushes him. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Time passes no faster for my kind than it does for humanity." "But we didn't even want you. We wanted to capture death." "What? You foolish mortal. Count yourself and your planet lucky that you did not succeed." Morpheus demands his tools and is told they were stolen by Sykes 50 years ago. "I see. For your punishment, I grant you the gift of eternal waking." And the Dream Lord disappears in a shimmer of twinkling lights. "No!" Alex wakes with a cry. "Are you alright?" asks Paul. "Oh, sorry, I had a nightmare. I dreamed our prisoner had escaped." "He has," replies Paul, and we see Paul's face begin to melt like wax. Alex wakes a second time, terrified. "Stay away from me!" But it's only his nurse. She tells him to calm down. It was only a bad dream. Then, her head rolls off her body and falls into Alex's lap. On the final page, we see Morpheus and are privy to his thoughts. "He will never return to the life he knew. He exists in an everlasting nightmare. Eternal waking." So ends issue 1 of the Sandman. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you can tell how much I love this series. I grew up reading this series when I was really getting into comics, and yeah, I have all the issues. Very, very precious treasure that I have here in Japan. All 75 issues plus the special, so yeah. Okay, so as I said before, I'm going to read from issue 4, where you get Neil Gaiman's Sandman kind of origin story, why he started it, where he got the ideas from, and yeah, it's interesting, but say it's long, so if you want to hear it all, please keep listening. If not, thank you so much for watching. There we go, can you see that? As I say, I'm not going to read the whole thing, I can cut some things out, but I want to give you the most important parts of it. Okay, here we go. The origin of the comic you are now holding, what it is and how it came to be, by the author, Neil Gaiman, age 28.5. The summer of 1967 was an important time for me. I was nearly 7 and I was given a box of delights. Actually, a large cardboard box full of comics. Piles of DC and Marvel goodies, gaudy and wonderful tales of strange people in garish costumes, and I was, for all intents and purposes, lost forever. My favourite was Justice League of America, issue 47. I have a copy in front of me as I write. "To touch Antimatter Man was to risk instant destruction," warns the cover, showing Batman risking instant destruction by giving the Antimatter Man a solid right hook to the jaw. Inside, well, the plot concerns a life or death battle on the back of the Spectre, who is holding apart Earths 1 and 2. Antimatter Man, who is somewhere between 100 feet and 30,000 miles high, is being prevented from destroying the Earth by the superheroes of 2 worlds, who have divided into teams and are thumping him. You will all undoubtedly be pleased to hear that the various superheroes managed to defeat the Antimatter Man and blow the 2 worlds back to their respective dimensional orbits in a scant 20 pages. Sorry, I hadn't meant to burble on at such length about this forgotten masterpiece. Its only real importance in this column is that that was the first time I ever saw the Golden Age Sandman, the guy with the gas mask. First, he put glass foot cuffs on the Antimatter Man's feet, then he got buried in a pile of sand. It wasn't a big role, but there was something strangely attractive, something bizarrely different about the character. Possibly it was a suit, hat, gas mask and purple cape. That must have been it. That and the ability to create glass foot cuffs and piles of sand from nowhere. I read everything else in the box of comics. A few weeks later it was taken away and returned to its owner. But I continued to hunt down and read American comics. The damage had been done. And in the comics I read, the Golden Age Sandman was fairly conspicuous by his absence. Right, let's fast forward about 8 years. Here's around 1975. I'm about 14 and I'm planning on discovering girls as soon as my spots go away. In the meantime, I'm back into comics. It would be good copy, but entirely untrue to say that I was a huge fan of the 1974 Sandman. Looking back over those 6 comics, I still have strangely mixed feelings about the title. This red and yellow guy living in his dream dome, surrounded by TV screens, rescuing young Jed from the evil Dr. Spider, the brain that blacked out the Bronx and his gorillas, aliens, frogmen and the like. I liked the Kirby covers and the bizarre Fleischer scripts, but it was a peculiar, tongue-in-cheek offering and I felt, well, uncomfortable with it. Still, there was something fascinating about the character, somebody who lived in dreams. It had potential. And then it's summer 1987 and I'm writing the first draft of Black Orchid issue 1. I wrote the following note to Dave McKean while drafting a dream sequence. Okay, this is Neil Gaiman's words. Incidentally, something I sort of like the idea of, but you might think is too hokey, is we have a crowd scene within a dream. We include characters from DC's Dream Stream, which is to say, most dreams are full of non-sequiturs anyway, so having Kane or Abel as waiters, or the Sandman, Brute and Glob standing on a street corner at a weird angle as a taxi passes by would make a certain amount of convoluted and cockeyed sense. They wouldn't be highlighted, they'd just be there. It had gone by the second draft, but the seed of an idea was germinating in the muck-filled morass of the back of my mind. Nothing you could put your finger on, but still. I began to make notes for a possible treatment of the 1974 Sandman, and mentioned them in passing to Karen Berger when she was in London for the September 1987 UK Comic Convention. I didn't think anything more of it, and when Karen phoned me a couple of months later to ask if I'd like to write a monthly book, the Sandman wasn't even on the list. After all, I wanted to do a horror title. Karen phoned back a few weeks later, following one of DC Editorial's retreats. She said, "Would you like to do the Sandman?" And I said, yes, definitely. What's the catch? There's only one. We'd like a new Sandman. Keep the name, but the rest is up to you. I put the phone down in a slight daze and spent the next day or so bumping into things while I thought about the Sandman. Later that week, we had the first hurricane to devastate the south of England in 500 years, but I hardly noticed. I was thinking about a thin, young-looking, raven-haired being in black clothes, imprisoned for 70 years in an airless glass cage. I was wondering how Death dressed, what was in the ribbon-wrapped box that Kane gave Abel, and wondering why Wesley Dodds really wore a gas mask. I was phoning Jamie Delano to ask if I could borrow John Constantine, thumbing through books on dreams and nightmares, including Oliver Sacks' Awakenings, which tells you almost anything you want to know about the peculiar epidemic of sleepy sickness that hit the Western world earlier this century. I was thinking about the Burgesses, digging up material about an old JLA villain who might fit nicely into the landscape that seemed to be emerging. I was imagining a comic that wasn't strictly horror, wasn't fantasy, wasn't a superhero title, but was a strange amalgam of all three. A comic in which the boundaries were as distant as the frontiers of dream. When, post-hurricane, we got our electricity back, and after I'd run around the house turning the lights on and off just to be sure, I dashed to my computer, wrote about 30 rambling single-spaced pages, much like this one, and sent it to Karen. She liked them. We were in business. And that was basically that, except for writing the scripts, and, with Karen of course, picking the artists, and persuading DC that the world was ready for a portrait gallery of Dave McKean's covers with shelving up the sides, and transatlantic conversations with Sam and Mike, wondering what to name the letter column. As I write this, Sandman issue 1 has just come out, and I'm surprised and pleased how many of you seem to like it. Thank you, Harlan. Thank you, all of you. All the letters are really positive. Now we only need to name the letter column and we can all go home. I still don't know who that 1967 box of comics actually belonged to. I wonder if whoever it was knew it wasn't just a box of comics, it was a box of dreams. Neil Gaiman, Sussex, England, January 1989. Wakisashi's Tea House. Please subscribe.